In this tutorial, I'll be sharing a really helpful technique for color grading images that are shot on white limbo or an all-white background. Shooting on white limbo is popular for commercial production and is often used for other formats like documentaries. Take Apple for example. The majority of videos that they produce for product launches are made using a white limbo, and there are good reasons for that. The most obvious reason is because video shot against white limbo has a very clean look and helps viewers to focus their attention on a specific product or person. Now, at first glance, these kinds of shots might appear easy to grade, but like anything else, it takes practice, and knowing the right approaches and techniques will set your images apart. From my experience of grading these kinds of shots, there are two special considerations to keep in mind. The first consideration is the luma levels, and the second is the white balance of the background. We want the luma levels to be in the neighborhood of 100 IRE, and we also want the color balance to be perfectly white and neutral. A well-lit limbo won't give you any major issues to deal with, but what's that saying they use on set? Something like, they'll just fix it in post? Well, sometimes we get handed footage that needs some good old-fashioned fixin', and in this tutorial, I'll share some helpful tips on how to do that. So let's dive in. In the two white limbo examples we're using here in Adobe Premiere Pro, we'll need to fix both the luma and the background. This is even more apparent when we analyze the waveform scope. As you can see in both images, the luma levels of the limbo are well below 100 IRE, and the white balance exhibits a warm color cast. When we change the waveform display type to RGB, you'll notice in the trace that the red channel is elevated above the green and blue channels, resulting in warm color temperature. So to fix this, our first step will be to balance the exposure using the highlight, midtone, and shadow controls with the three-way color wheels. Let's increase the highlights, moving them toward 100 IRE. We'll bring the shadows down close to 0, and adjust the mids until we get our skin tone levels in a good range, right about there. Next, let's see what we can do to fix our color temperature. Starting with the highlights, let's begin moving the crosshair in a top-down motion away from red towards blue, then left to right, away from green and toward magenta. We'll keep moving in this top-down and left-right direction until we balance the red, green, and blue channel trace at the top of the waveform. When the colors line up equally, we have white. Next, let's raise the highlights of the background until we just start to blow them out. Now we've already pushed the highlights as far as we can in the color wheels, so we'll need to add another instance of lumetri, and then begin raising the highlights until they start to peak above 100 IRE. There. Let's see the before and after. Yeah, better like butter. Okay, so we got a good result in our first shot, and in this next example, I'm going to share a more advanced technique that will give you separate control between the background and our talent. Let's repeat the same steps we used in the first example, raising the highlights until they reach just under 100 IRE. Then we'll lower the shadows, and adjust our midtones down to right about there. Next, we'll address the color balance issue by adjusting our highlights in a top-down and left-right motions until we are able to balance the red, green, and blue channels in our scopes. Let's also correct the color balance in the shadows by moving the crosshairs in a top-down motion to right about there. That's looking better. Okay, now let's look at the more advanced technique that I was telling you about. What we want to do here is to create a nice separation between the background, that being the white limbo, and our talent. So to do that, let's open the HSL secondary panel, and we'll begin to create a separate key for the background by pressing the Luma Vector button here. Now what this has done is it has isolated only the Luma slider in the HSL secondary controls. Watch what happens as I begin to pull this triangle to the left. Lumetri automatically highlights specific regions of the image that are being added to the key. And the more we expand the slider, the more we increase the tonal range of our key. Now, we don't want our talent to be qualified in this key, so let's start moving the slider to the right. We'll keep adjusting it until we've isolated only the background, right about there. Let's add a feather by pulling this triangle to the left. And finish our key by increasing the denoise filter and adding some blur to the matte. That's looking good. Next, we'll press this button to open the three-way color wheels and begin raising the highlights on our background until we just start blowing them out. Then we'll decrease the saturation all the way to 0, giving us a neutral white background. For the final step, we'll need to add another instance of Lumetri. Let's open the Basic Corrections tab. Let's increase the saturation until our talent and the red chair really start to pop. Let's see the before and after. Dang! I think we did a pretty good job on that one. Now, you won't always need to use this technique, and most of the time, we'll be able to get it done by using the simpler method, but knowing how to use both will come in really handy and give you more options to make your grades look amazing. I hope you enjoy this tutorial, and I invite you to take advantage of the exercise files to see what you can come up with. Thanks for watching.